Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered how we got there? How did humanity go from being bound to Earth to sending robots to Mars and people to the moon? The dream of exploration, but in the fires of war. This is the evolution of rockets, our epic quest to leave Earth. Our story starts in the darkest days of World War II, with a weapon of terror, the V-2 rocket, developed by Nazi Germany. The V-2 was the world's first long-range ballistic missile. It was a terrifying invention, but inside its destructive design were the fundamental principles that would one day power our journey to the stars. The key figure behind it was Wernher von Braun, a brilliant but controversial engineer whose destiny would become intertwined with America's space ambitions. After the war, both the United States and the Soviet Union scrambled to capture German rocket technology and its scientists. This was Operation Paperclip. Von Braun and his team were brought to America, and their expertise became the bedrock of the U.S. rocket program. The Cold War was heating up, and the next battlefield wasn't on Earth, it was in space. The space race had begun. The Soviets struck first in 1957, launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. The beep-beep signal from orbit was a wake-up call for America. The pressure was on. This led to the creation of NASA in 1958. The mission was clear: catch up to the Soviets and surpass them. The early years were a flurry of activity with rockets like the Redstone, which put the first American, Alan Shepard, into space. But these were just baby steps. President. John F. Kennedy's bold declaration in 1961 to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade required a machine of unprecedented scale and power. It required a giant. Enter the Saturn V, standing taller than a 36-story building. It remains the most powerful rocket ever successfully flown. Designed by Wernher von Braun's team at NASA, the Saturn V was a masterpiece of engineering. Its first stage alone, with 5 F1 engines, generated over 7.5 million pounds of thrust. Think about that, it's the equivalent power of 85 Hoover dams. Every single launch was a controlled explosion of immense force, a spectacle of fire and sound that literally shook the ground for miles. It was this incredible machine that carried the Apollo astronauts on their historic journeys to the moon, fulfilling Kennedy's promise and marking what is arguably humanity's greatest technological achievement. But the Apollo program was incredibly expensive. After the moon landing, the public's and politicians' appetite for such costly missions waned. NASA needed a cheaper, more sustainable way to get to space. The answer was a vehicle that could launch like a rocket but land like a plane. The Space Shuttle, first launched in 1981, the shuttle was revolutionary. It was the world's first reusable spacecraft. For 3 decades, the fleet of orbiters Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour became the workhorses of low Earth orbit. They deployed satellites, repaired the Hubble Space Telescope, and built the single largest structure in space, the International Space Station. The shuttle program was a marvel, but it wasn't without tragedy. The loss of Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003 were heartbreaking reminders of the inherent dangers of space travel. The program also never fully delivered on its promise of cheap and frequent access to space. By the time the final mission landed in 2011, it was clear a new approach was needed. For a while, the US had to rely on Russian Soyuz rockets to get its astronauts to the ISS. It seemed like the grand era of American spaceflight was on hold. But then, a new player entered the game, not a government agency, but a private company with an audacious goal. Founded in 2002 by Elon Musk, SpaceX had a mission to make humanity a multiplanetary species. And to do that, they had to solve the biggest problem in rocketry: costs. A traditional rocket is used only once. Imagine flying from New York to London on a Boeing 747 and then throwing the plane away after you land. That's how we've been flying to space for 50 years. SpaceX's solution was radical. Make the most expensive part of the rocket, the first stage booster, reusable. The world watched, skeptical at first, as they tried and failed to land their Falcon 9 boosters on drone ships at sea. Many said it was impossible, but in 2015, they did it. They landed a rocket booster upright after it had sent its payload to space. It was a moment that changed spaceflight forever. Suddenly, the cost of getting to orbit plummeted. SpaceX began launching, landing, and relaunching its rockets at a pace never seen before, dominating the commercial launch market. In 2020, they returned human spaceflight to American soil with their Dragon capsule, ending their reliance on Russia. And they're not stopping there. SpaceX is now building its next generation rocket, Starship. Fully reusable and designed to be mass-produced, Starship is the vehicle Musk hopes will finally take humans to Mars. It's a breathtakingly ambitious project, pushing the boundaries of what's possible, much like the Saturn V did half a century ago. From a weapon of war to a lunar giant, from a spaceplane to a fleet of reusable rockets, the journey has been incredible. Each step, each failure, and each triumph has brought us closer to the stars. The story of the rocket is a story of human ingenuity, ambition, and our relentless desire to explore the unknown. The next chapter is being written right now, and it promises to take us to worlds we've only dreamed of. Thanks for joining us on this journey through space history. If you love deep dives into science and technology, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. What do you think is the next giant leap for humanity? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.